GM. Can everyone hear me okay? Well, I can hear you, that's for sure.
Yeah, likewise.
Nice. How's it going?
Yeah, things are good. This is Aiden from Snowbridge speaking.
Cool. I think we are good to kick off. Awesome. We can hear everyone. Cool. Thanks all for joining. Today we are going to do a bit of a deep dive into Snowbridge. We're joined by Aiden, who's on the Snowfork account here. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Snowbridge, like what it is, some of the plans for it, when it's going to launch, and a bit of a roadmap. Snowbridge has actually been in the works for some time now, and so this is a pretty exciting month, I guess you could say, to kind of catch up and talk about their launch plans, and good to get them up here on a Twitter space. I think it's been a while since we've had them up to kind of chat about what they've been doing. You may have seen them at Decoded last year, talking about their work, and also at kind of some of the developer Polkadot conferences like Sub-Zero and some of the others. So yeah, let's get into it. I will be your host, asking questions, as always, if you've listened to any of these other spaces I've done. I'm Berto. I've working at Parity for the last year or so. If you are listening, it would be really awesome if you could retweet the space, give it a like, bookmark it, or comment. A question would be super handy to help us with some engagement and to reach out into the broader crypto Twitter than just Polkadot. It would be awesome. If you do also want to ask a question for Aiden, please feel free to do that. You can do that in the bottom, if you're on mobile, bottom right, click the little blue thing and or post a question or post a reply. If you're on desktop, a little bit easier. Cool. Aiden, the first question, is it live?
So the bridge is live. It's currently deployed to Polkadot and it's running. We're busy doing some internal testing to kind of finalize things before we share it with the public. If you go digging around, you can probably find a way to test it out yourself now, but we're planning to, officially announce it and release a UI for it next week.
Okay, awesome.
So far so good. And looking forward to getting it used very soon.
Very cool. Okay, let's go into some more standard questions. I just thought we'd jump to the chase. It'd be awesome if you could give us a bit of an intro. Let us know what is Snowfork versus Snowbridge, and kind of what you've been working on for the last couple of months.
Yeah, sure. So it's a bit of background. Snowfork has been kind of a team of people doing stuff related to Web3 and blockchain for many years now. And Snowbridge is one of the projects that we started a few years ago. It's now Snowbridge has come to take over most of the activity that we do at Snowfork now. And so I think we're due to probably rename this account to Snowbridge and be at that. But essentially, we started Snowbridge about, I'd say 3 to 4 years ago is when it first got started. And we worked initially on actually proof of work bridge when Ethereum used to be proof of work. Then that kind of went pretty well, but of course Ethereum moved to proof of stake. Polkadot moved to new kind of mechanisms for XEM. Polkadot started to develop Beefy, and Beefy took a while to come along. And so it's been a long process to get to where we are today. But, now we've kind of been working on this iteration of the bridge for about a year and a half, until today to kind of go live. And that's kind of the kind of high level overview of kind of Snowfork and Snowbridge. I guess from there we can start to talk about the project, but does that answer your question?
Yeah, awesome. I imagine some of the Polkadot is, I guess you could say rapidly changing in the blockchain landscape, and Ethereum has had some changes too. I imagine that has maybe hindered is the wrong word, but added extra complexities along the way, right?
Yeah, that's definitely the case. I mean, we've been kind of hit on multiple dimensions with that, whether it's Ethereum and Ethereum's changed from proof of work to proof of stake, a lot of the updates to Ethereum that we've seen over the last year, but then similarly on the Polkadot side, both Polkadot itself, and Substrate, but as well as like the beefy proof system that has taken a long time to come alive. XCM was an interesting one because, we initially developed our bridge with our own kind of messaging protocol before XCM was mature, but then XCM became more mature. And so, there was a lot of interest to convert our standards to be one-to-one with XCM. And so that was a bunch of work, but I think we're in like a great place now where our bridge kind of works with normal XCM messages, just like you would for communicating with any parachain. And then of course the Bridge Hub is this newer thing that's come around over the last, 6 to 9 months. And so, that caused like a big re-architecture for us in having to migrate from our own parachain, onto Bridge Hub and re-architect some of our systems to work with all of the standards that Bridge Hub and Asset Hub, have been pushing for in the ecosystem.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Okay, cool. Maybe we can dive into those in a little bit more detail soon. I guess it would be interesting to hear from your side why the launch of Snowbridge is exciting, and maybe like what kind of sets Snowbridge apart from some of the others that we have in the ecosystem.
Yeah. So maybe to take a step back and kind of explain how we think about bridges and trust. So I think the core part of bridging between different blockchains is how you think about trust. You want to trust that your assets are safe. You want to trust that the systems that you're using are safe. You want to trust that you're not going to get censored or that there's not going to be fraud. And that trust comes from multiple different places. When you're just transacting on Polkadot by itself, sending a message from or sending a two dot from one Polkadot account to another, what you're really trusting in is the Polkadot consensus algorithm, the Polkadot code, and the Polkadot's current validator set, and the fact that there's the like proof of stake with 2/3 majority on kind of Polkadot's consensus, and that's the only thing you have to trust. Those set of things are the only things you have to trust when you're transacting on Polkadot. Similarly, when you're transacting on Ethereum, you need to trust the Ethereum protocol, the current Ethereum validator set, and kind of the code and implementation and similar systems around that. And that's kind of a thing that I think most people tend to understand and have like a good sense for when they're using a system, what they're trusting. But then with bridges and when we're connecting multiple systems, there's a lot of complexity added. And so there's usually this additional piece that connects these two systems that adds an additional layer of trust. If we look at the kind of bridges in the Polkadot ecosystem today, things like Wormhole, essentially or Axelar, they have either their own multi-sig or their own separate chain, which adds this other piece into the system that you need to trust. And so when we talk about Snowbridge being trustless, what we really mean is that the only things you need to trust in terms of the architecture of Snowbridge are Polkadot and Ethereum itself. We don't introduce any additional kind of layer of trust or assumptions beyond, obviously our code and our protocol. But there's no additional third party or, entity involved, as opposed to, with like multi-sig bridges where you have to trust the multi-sig holders. And so, that's kind of the high level of one way to think about trust. But I think to take that a step further in the Polkadot ecosystem, we need to think about like, what's the purpose of Polkadot? And the kind of purpose of Polkadot was to have this relay chain that provided trust to other chains and to other systems. And so the whole kind of value proposition of Polkadot is that it can be a source of trust for other systems. And so the challenge with some of these other bridges is that they almost undermine the kind of value proposition of Polkadot itself, because with trust, it's about like the trust is in the weakest link. So if you've got a bridge that involves like a multi-sig somewhere along the line, then the security of all the assets that go through that bridge now become degraded to the trust level of the multi-sig. And so even though, we've got really great trust from proof of stake in Polkadot, if, 50% or 30% or however many percent of the assets that are flowing around the different protocols and dApps have a pass through a multi-sig bridge at one point, all of that trust that we're getting from Polkadot is effectively lost, and being wasted. And so Snowbridge is, intending to solve this problem, not just to be like a more trustless bridge, but really to kind of ensure that Polkadot's value proposition is preserved.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So like aligns with the ethos of the ecosystem more than some of the others. Yeah, that's super interesting. Okay. And so maybe we can talk about the launch a little bit. You mentioned earlier on, you'd kind of planned for next week potentially, or did I hear that wrong?
Yeah. So that's correct. We're planning to kind of publicize the launch next week. everything is actually live today, and our tests are going well. But we're busy making some like polish on the interface for the launch, and so we'll release next week a kind of app where people can go and bridge back and forth. We're also working with Velocity Labs over the coming weeks to launch like a kind of full asset transfer web app where people will be able to use that to not just like transfer between Polkadot and Ethereum, but like eventually across all of XCM, and so really kind of have a seamless UX for transfers longer term. But next week we're ready to go with our dedicated UI.
Nice. Okay, that's super cool. It's been a long time coming. I think many will be excited to use it. And so currently the bridge only works with Ethereum mainnet, correct?
Yes, that's correct. The bridge is kind of focused on Ethereum mainnet. I mean, we have discussed connecting to layer 2s at some point, but I think there's a lot of open questions around trust with layer 2s. If you think about most of the layer 2s on Ethereum today, they have some kind of centralized component, or they have like a 7-day withdrawal window, and so there's some complexities there. But yeah, we're very much just focused on mainnet for now.
Okay. What would be I guess that kind of like roadmap or timeline if you were to like add to an L2, for example?
Yeah, I think that really depends on like discussions with the community and the wider ecosystem, because it's fairly straightforward to use one of the existing multi-sig or like traditional bridge mechanisms to an L2. But if you want to be fully trustless with a light client like we have, then you have to kind of constrain yourself to the security model of the L2. And if you look at all of the Ethereum L2s today, like the major ones like Optimism and Arbitrum, they're all optimistic L2s, which means that when you're using them, you get your transactions confirmed very quickly, but it takes about 7 days often for that transaction to really finalize on Ethereum. And that's why you see with like Optimism, if you try and do a withdrawal through their main bridge, you have to wait often for like a 7-day withdrawal window for true finalization. And so that would mean that essentially if we wanted to kind of uphold the same consensus system that the L2 has, we would also need essentially a 7-day wait. If you wanted to transfer from, say, Optimism to Polkadot and have it maintain all of the exact same trust properties as Optimism, you need to have that 7-day withdrawal window. I think that there are workarounds to that. Like, the one is for asset transfers, there's like atomic swaps and shortcuts you can take. But that's kind of the one constraint that comes with a light client based bridge for L2s. And so I think we are going to explore some of those shortcuts, and they will make things better for a lot of use cases and applications. But fundamentally, there is still this constraint, because that's kind of how the L2s are designed. I think like maybe in a year or two, when some of these L2s upgrade their settlement system, especially like the ZK based L2s that aren't burdened by like a 7-day confirmation time, then that will be interesting to see.
Really makes you remember how good we have it over here.
Exactly.
What about kind of other asset support? So for now, the bridge will support wrapped ETH only, correct? What about expanding to like normal ETH or USDC or other types of like ERC20 assets or anything like that?
Yeah, so actually the bridge already supports all ERC20 assets. And we have basically a trustless registration process. So basically anyone can register an ERC20 asset if they want to. We're going to, for the launch, just limit it to maybe 5 to 10 assets. But anyone with, technical ability can go and register new ERC20s, and we'll be adding more, to at least our user interface over time. And so even, with next week's launch, we'll have a few different ERC20s supported. What's not yet supported is assets from the Polkadot side. So say like DOT and Parachain tokens going over to Ethereum. We have already implemented that, and we've got like a kind of pull request ready to merge there, but we wanted to first kind of go live with this, and that the kind of functionality for assets coming from Polkadot to Ethereum. It's ready. We'll probably enable it in maybe a month or two once we've let this initial kind of functionality bake in.
Oh, totally, yeah. I mean, I think it makes sense to launch it and then iterate and add new stuff over time. No need to do it all at once. Okay, that's cool. And what about the other thing that kind of springs to mind is like wallet support or like integration of like Snowbridge into other dApps or like wallets or other kind of like areas in the ecosystem. Has there been much discussion around that?
Yeah, so that's been a big kind of effort that we've been ramping up over the last 2 or 3 months is really integrations and business development. And that covers things from integrations with wallets, integrations with parachains, integrations with dApps. And so, yeah, I can talk about where we're at with some of that. So on the parachain side, we've been working with a few big parachains. Mythical is one that we're going to be launching kind of their token bridging over to their chain next week. We've been talking to Moonbeam, to Hydra, to a few of the other kind of chains for an integration. And I think within, for most of these teams, we've already got like the code for support merged into their chain. And so usually it depends on the chain. Some chains have like a 1 to 2 month upgrade process. So for example, I think Moonbeam's main next upgrade stage is scheduled for late August. And so we're hoping to, like, we've already got the code in, and so we're hoping to be part of that upgrade. For Hydra, I think it's a similar timeline over the next few weeks. On the wallet side of things, we are also talking to wallets. So we've also got a fix for sub-wallet, so that sub-wallet will support Snowbridge assets. We are in touch with like Talisman and 1 or 2 of the other wallet teams to get that support added in the next few weeks as well. The nice thing is that adding support is often just a small code change because, our assets look very much the same as native Polkadot assets. The way in which we've implemented our bridge is so that our assets are essentially minted on Asset Hub and look like any other kind of asset in the Polkadot ecosystem. The main difference is bridged assets are treated a little bit differently on the technical side. And you may have noticed this if you've tried to use the Polkadot Kusama bridge that went live a few weeks ago. Those assets don't show up in your wallet properly yet either. And so it's the same fix that we're working with wallets to get done.
Gotcha. So you may, unless these changes are rolled out for the wallets, you may bridge funds but not see them directly in the wallet just yet.
Yeah. It depends which wallet you use. So, next week we'll announce which wallets has added support. You can still, see the assets on our user interface, and you can still transfer them and do things with them. But it may take a few more days for the latest versions of the wallets to be updated.
Yep. Yeah, no, totally makes sense. What about, I think there has been some discussion around like other asset types. I'm thinking like NFTs or 721s or 1155s or something like that. Like, has there been much thought about bridging, assets beyond ERC20s through Snowbridge?
Yeah, totally. So kind of one characteristic of our bridge is that it is agnostic to assets. So we're launching next week with a user interface for assets, but like below the hood, our messaging protocol supports any kind of messages. And so it supports like arbitrary data being sent between Polkadot and Ethereum. We've actually already got like a proof of concept implementation of NFT support that's built on top of that layer. That's similar to kind of supporting Polkadot assets. We want to let this first version bake for a month or 2, but then we'll activate that feature. And like furthermore, with that feature, it really supports transact. So if you're familiar with XCM, it has a kind of transact message which allows different parachains to arbitrarily send arbitrary messages between each other. The same thing applies where you can take a transact message and instead of sending it to another parachain, send it through our bridge to Ethereum, and then it will get converted into like an Ethereum smart contract call. And the same vice versa. An Ethereum smart contract will be able to kind of construct an arbitrary XCM transact message that gets sent to a parachain and calls any like random function on any palette in a parachain. And so that's all already kind of implemented. We've got a pull request out that's working for that, and we're waiting, for final audits and fixes on that, before going live with it.
Very cool. Now Irvin will be able to bridge his board ape over, so we're all happy. That sounds like it's all coming to a head, which is pretty cool. So the bridge is using, I think you mentioned it earlier, the bridge is using Bridge Hub, but assets will arrive on Asset Hub. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more, like from the technical side of things, like how that will kind of work, and like maybe what Bridge Hub provides, for you and the product.
Yeah, totally. So I think Bridge Hub started probably about 6 to 9 months ago with this idea that we want to remove all functionality from Polkadot off the reader chain and into these different public common good chains. And so the two main teams that are working on Bridge Hub is us, Snowflake and Parity, with the Kusama Polkadot bridge. And this kind of separation of concerns, I think, is a good design pattern that for the Polkadot ecosystem really like makes things more flexible. And so how it works is essentially Bridge Hub is responsible for messaging and for the light clients. Our Bridge has, you can think about Bridge as like 3 layers. The bottom layer being light clients, which kind of verify consensus of each chain, allowing Polkadot to follow along with the Ethereum's consensus. The second layer being the messaging protocol, and that's the protocol for sending messages between Polkadot and Ethereum and for converting between like XCM based standards and Ethereum smart contract calls and Ethereum based standards. And then the third layer, you can think of as like an application layer, which Asset Hub is one kind of application layer where assets are being created and sent across. As I mentioned, if we do NFTs or any other kinds of cross-chain applications later, that'll be also things that live at the kind of asset layer. And so that bottom layer and the second layer of light clients and messaging lives on Bridge Hub. But then the third layer of like an asset based application is living on Asset Hub. And that's what Asset Hub was designed for. And so we don't even need to, we didn't really need to change much code on Asset Hub to make it compatible with the bridge, because we've integrated it in a way such that it fits with the native way in which Polkadot creates and stores assets.
Yeah, very nice. Okay. That sounds like the plan is coming to fruition from many different sides, which is cool. What about some more future plans? So like we've kind of spoken about different asset support, NFT support, different L2s or maybe different networks. Any thoughts about like other ecosystems? I'm thinking like Solana or anything like that, like or any other kind of future plans that you could maybe share or discuss?
Yeah, sure. So I'd say our kind of short to medium term plans are still very much focused on like Polkadot and Ethereum as opposed to branching out to other ecosystems. It's certainly something we could explore further down the line. But even within the Polkadot Ethereum ecosystem, there's a lot of improvements that we want to make. The kind of obvious ones are improvements to kind of costs and latency. If we look at the bridge today, latency is around like 20 minutes for the one direction, and somewhere between 20 minutes and 3 to 4 hours for the other direction, depending on costs. And so that's a kind of number we want to bring down and make some optimizations to reduce. The second is costs. So costs range from about like $20 to $100, depending on gas prices and fees for transfers in each direction, which is quite high, especially when Ethereum gas prices are high. And so that's another area that we want to optimize. And so that will be one area of focus. I think the other area of focus is really on like integrations. I think we're going live with this bridge, but really what matters is how people can use it and what people can do with it. And so making sure we have like great integrations with the different applications and parachains in the Polkadot ecosystem, different like DeFi products, so that there's like a lot more ways to use and kind of spread liquidity through the ecosystem will be another kind of focus. I'd say another area is, I think I mentioned it for a second earlier in this chat, this idea of atomic swaps, where it's probably not the best example, but if we remember when Nomad launched, they had this kind of fast lane and a slow lane, where the slow lane was like their bridge that was the optimistic bridge that got hacked, but the fast lane was actually like a reliable kind of great service that they built on top of a product called Connect, which was an atomic swap, which essentially means that like if I want to send $100 across the bridge, instead of necessarily going through the slow lane of going through the bridge, I could just swap my $100 with someone else that has it on the other side of the bridge immediately in like a single confirmation, 5-second transaction, and have this fast lane. And so kind of exploring an implementation of this fast lane on top of a much more trustless slow lane rather than that would be another kind of area that we're wanting to explore. And then I think, there's some discussion about liquidity programs and incentives further down the line to really help bootstrap liquidity in the ecosystem. And, discussions about like furthering incentives for other parties to kind of run some of the infrastructure. We're, running it next week, but all of the infrastructure's open source and anyone's able to run a relay actually already today. And so putting more effort into helping people do that will be another focus of ours.
Nice. Okay. Does that mean, are we going to see a snow token?
It's definitely not likely. I think one of the kind of agendas behind the project was to build as a public good, and why we went with Bridge Hub. So yeah, I'd say at this stage, not too likely.
Fair enough. Okay, cool. Okay. And I had another question, but I just totally forgot it. Gone from my brain. Apologies. Maybe I was interested in chatting about like the fast lane and the atomic swaps. That would be an interesting thing to expand on. I guess then that would mean that that would significantly reduce the bridging time, right? Down to, a transaction rather than the 20-minute time.
Yeah, both the time and costs. And so I think atomic swaps are this like older concept that they've probably been around for, I don't know, maybe a decade now. I think they originally started in like the Bitcoin space. And the idea is that if two people want to, if you want to trade one asset for another, even if we think about like a simple version on a single chain, I'm trying to trade, say, my ETH for USDC. The one way to do it is to go through like Uniswap, and it's going through the chain, it's going through an application. But another way is to just swap it with another person in like a direct peer-to-peer exchange. And that exchange only involves two parties. But when you're going through like a platform like Uniswap, it involves the two parties, but also like all the other liquidity providers and the pool. And so it requires a lot more coordination and consensus because there's a lot more people involved. But when you're just swapping with one other person, it's just you and them, and you just need to coordinate with each other. And so that concept and that analogy also extends to bridges, where if you think about wanting to send some assets across the bridge, there you need to go through both chains, that you need to go through the bridging protocol and wait for the lifelines. But if, let's say you had 100 dots on Polkadot and I had 100 dots on ETH, on Ethereum, and we wanted to actually both bridge. The one way we could do it is we could just both use the bridge to move our assets across and then, get to the other side. But we could also just swap those assets directly with each other, and not use the bridge, at all. And that essentially would mean a single transfer from me to you on the Ethereum side and a single transfer from you to me on the Polkadot side. And it's just basically like a normal asset transfer, with a bunch of, smart contracts and, things to ensure that we don't need to trust each other. It's still possible to do this in a fully trustless way, but that's kind of a maybe high level explanation of what an atomic swap is as opposed to a bridge. And it doesn't work for everything. For example, if I wanted to send like $1 million through the bridge, then I would need to find $1 million worth of liquidity to be able to use an atomic swap, which is, unlikely to happen. And so you would still use the bridge.
I can spot you for the millions. Okay. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Similarly for like NFTs, right? NFTs are non-fungible. There's only one of them. I can't, do an atomic swap for my board 8 number 37. It has to go through the bridge. And so they kind of work together and it's almost like complementary technology. And so that's something we'd explore further down the line.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, cool. If you do have any questions as well, please feel free to put them in as a reply to the space. Would be great. On mobile in the bottom right, you can just kind of tap the little icon speech bubble, and easier on desktop. I was also interested in the kind of launch plans around networks. So Snowbridge will launch first on Polkadot, correct?
Yeah, so that's correct. We are first live on Polkadot, and that's what the focus is going to be like for the launch next week. But I think
it'll come to Kusama. Is there a plan to launch in Kusama, or does the Polkadot Kusama bridge kind of manage that already?
We have always planned to launch on Kusama, and so that is still kind of the plan. But I would say that like now that the Kusama Polkadot bridge is live, it is a possibility that we just use that. So I think we'll have some discussion with like the Kusama community over the kind of next few weeks after the Polkadot's launched and decide the best path. There's kind of trade-offs to each direction, but I think we have been planning to launch in Kusama, and so that is still, I'd say, plan A.
Gotcha. I see. And I think from memory, the reason for launching on Polkadot first is due to the way that Kusama is set up. I guess like there's a higher cost to do the proofs. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. It's essentially due to the speed of the chain. Polkadot runs about 4 times slower than Kusama, which means it costs about 4 times less to kind of run the bridge on Polkadot. We are kind of working on getting those costs sponsored over the coming weeks, and we'll have a proposal out to discuss that. And so, but once that's through, presuming things go well, then that'll be the only roadblock for Kusama. So yeah.
Okay, nice. So we'll see you on AAG in the coming weeks. Is that correct?
Yeah. Hopefully next week or the week after. We'll see.
Very exciting. Maybe a final question from me, and then I can have a look through the comments. But what about liquidity? So, with many standard bridges, they kind of need liquidity on both sides to manage these swaps. Is that the same for Snowbridge or different?
No, so Snowbridge is a bit different in that way, where you can use if there's not a single other human in the world using the bridge, and you want to use it with your liquidity, you can do it. You don't need to depend on anyone else. Having said that, that's for, we discussed this atomic swap feature earlier. For that, there would need to be kind of more liquidity, but that's not required for like the kind of core usage of the bridge. That's more like an added extra. And so even when we launch next week, like anyone will be able to bridge across kind of as they desire. Having said that, we do want to see more liquidity come into the Polkadot ecosystem and, spread through different applications. So we're talking to different parachains, different dexes about how we can kind of set up an incentive program or really encourage people to use this stuff. And so nothing kind of concrete to say about that yet, but maybe in the coming weeks we'll have more to share about that.
Okay, nice. There is one comment in the chat around State Mint NFTs. So as an FYI, State Mint has been renamed to Asset Hub. So if I was to bridge an NFT from Ethereum through Snowbridge, it would then create an NFT on Asset Hub, formerly known as State Mint, correct?
Yeah, so the implementation that we've got does exactly that.
Okay, nice. And there was one other question about Kusama, which I think we already covered. And last one was around fees. I think we touched on that briefly, but it might be nice to talk about that in a little bit more detail. What are the kind of fees that someone could expect? I just did it previously, and it cost me, I think, about $10 in gas. It wasn't overly that much, but I guess we're kind of somewhat at the mercy of Ethereum mainnet, right? But maybe if you could talk a little bit more about that, could be interesting.
Yeah, sure. So maybe I'll kind of talk about fees first in terms of the design and architecture of the bridge, and then talk about it just like how it would affect you as a user. Awesome. I mentioned that the bridge has these 3 layers of light clients, messaging, and application. And the fee structure is kind of separate into those layers as well. So the light client layer requires us to send updates between Polkadot and Ethereum for consensus. And that's something that someone has to do, but not everyone has to do, right? Only a single person needs to effectively cover the cost of those updates in order for the bridge to stay up to date. And so we're currently sponsoring all of those costs for the light client. Similarly, we expect that to be almost sponsored indefinitely, and that cost is on the order of around $300,000 to $400,000 per year for everyone in the whole ecosystem. And so we're imagining that will come out of like kind of treasury sponsorship longer term, and that we think that's kind of a reasonable amount to expect. That especially since it's shared, through the entire year across everyone that ever uses the bridge. I'm
sure we're paid more for less value. And so that's based on the session time of Polkadot, right? So that it wouldn't increase or decrease; it would be relatively fixed cost.
Exactly, yeah. It's a fixed cost based on the session time, and
Gotcha.
So what that essentially gets us is it gets us a finality or a kind of confirmation time on the bridge that's the same as the session time of Polkadot, which is at the moment 4 hours. Then I'll talk a bit more about that, but then there's the second layer of messaging. And so that's like every person that sends a message across the bridge needs to pay for the cost of their message. And then the third layer is for applications. Applications may want to impose their own cost. They may not. It depends on what the application is doing. So for example, for our asset, just a plain Ethereum transfer, still a kind of application of transferring ETH, that there is this tiny cost to that just to pay for essentially the gas on Asset Hub that's required to, change balances and construct assets on Asset Hub. And so for you as an individual user, you don't really need to think about that layer one, that like bottom layer, cost of consensus, because that's already kind of baked in. You only really need to think about the messaging cost. And as you saw, for the direction from Ethereum to Polkadot, it varies, but $10 I think is a good ballpark, for that. For going in reverse from Polkadot to Ethereum, it's a bit more expensive because the kind of, there's more computation that happens on Ethereum and more verification that happens on Ethereum, which is expensive. And so there we are seeing, in the range of like $50 to $150, depending on how prices change. That is something that, I think that is quite high. And so that's also why in the shorter term, we want to explore that atomic swap, idea, because that would mean that, if you're sending smaller transfers, $10, $5 even, instead of paying that full $150 fee for like a slow lane bridge, you would get a much smaller fee for a fast lane bridge. But yeah, for next week's launch, that's kind of what people should expect.
Yeah, I got you. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, people are only going to bridge in, right? So
exactly. Why do you ever need to leave?
Yeah, sounds good. Cool. I think that is all of the questions we had in the chat, unless you're interested in some airdrops or 35% off something else. But cool. Thanks heaps for your time. Super interesting to chat. If you have just joined the end of the session, it might be just worth recapping around the launch. Snowbridge is planning to launch formally next week after some changes, and I guess like optimizations of the chain, of the bridge rather, which is super exciting. So look out for some announcements from the Polkadot account, from that, which would be very, very cool to see. And as I mentioned, it's been a long time coming, and I think many people will be very excited. I just, tested it out myself sneaky today, but, everyone else will get the, opportunity very soon, which is super cool. So, thanks heaps for, I guess, you and the team, hard work. It's been a long time coming. I guess you guys are going to have a big party to celebrate, right?
Yeah, of course. It's been a while, and we're super excited about this launch finally being ready to go. And so, really looking forward to the next few weeks also to see this thing get used and to see if we can unlock new, liquidity and new kinds of use cases for the Polkadot ecosystem.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. Cool. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for your time. And as mentioned, coming soon, look out to the main Polkadot account for the confirmation that Snowbridge will be live. And I guess we'll see you guys on AAG as mentioned, and keep in touch.
Hopefully chat soon. And thanks everyone for joining in. And of course, feel free to kind of message us if there's further questions. As long as we, hopefully we don't get thousands of messages. We don't have a full-on support team, but the occasional thing we pay attention to. And especially like with the launch next week, once things are live, we definitely
might be a little bit busy, right?
For the feedback. Yeah.
I think your response rate on Telegram might increase from 24 hours up to a couple days maybe. So okay, cool, nice. Thanks all. Chat soon.
Cool. Thanks. See ya.